Hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about Process. Process is the map that people usually learn first when they play sixes, and it might be the most popular map. It's certainly the most popular map at a lower level, and this is the map that people are generally taught to play the format on. And I kind of want to just talk about the map, talk about its legacy, how it changed, how people see and play sixes to some extent, and also talk about, is the map even good? Because, it's impossible to argue that Process isn't influential and isn't iconic for sixes, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily a good map. And for anyone who, or any of my friends who I play Counter-Strike with, could tell you, a map like Dust 2, which is inarguably iconic and classic and has an insane legacy, as far as not only recognizability, but also map design is concerned, and kind of changing how people think about Counter-Strike maps. I hate Dust 2. I think it sucks. So, yeah, a map being iconic does not necessarily mean it is good, and so that's something else that we'll touch on today. So, for starters, what does Process, do influentially, or what is the legacy that Process leaves? Well, for starters, and I've talked about this before, how in a post-Process world, a lot of maps kind of resemble Process to the point where a map like Sunshine is it's just called a Process clone because it is extremely similar in many respects. And I might argue a little better, but that might be burying the lead. But what are some of these Process influences we see in other maps? Well, for starters, the choke design is very influential. And Process choke, actually, it's still a choke point, right? It's still somewhere where you're expecting to take a lot of damage and spam if you try and walk through it. However, the fact that it is raised and provides some relative high ground is quite interesting, because on one hand, it makes it still a choke point, right, where it's harder to fight through the choke and like across it, because it is literally obstructing things. But also worth noting is that it makes playing the choke a lot more dynamic, and the possibility of taking space is a lot easier or much more present, right? Where you take a brutal choke point like Gully Wash, you are not getting through Gully Wash choke to any extent until you fully deal with the soldier holding it, right? Until you spam that guy off the door in its entirety. Versus Process, you have a little more room to work around with. And you can absolutely, especially as a scout or something like that, you can absolutely play that door more dynamically. Draw out the spam. Say a demo's trying to hold choke. Well, if you're standing on that high ground, he can shoot the sticky directly at you, and you can just run in and take some space in yard or something like that. Or play back and try and avoid that, etc. The point being that this choke design is much more fluid and much more dynamic, and allows teams some potential space-taking opportunities during pressures, which is interesting, at least interesting gameplay. It makes the game more dynamic than just, okay, this is the brutal choke, and we need to 100% deal with the guy holding it if we even want to think about taking any sort of space in the choke, right? It's definitely more fluid than that. And this choke design is something that you see obviously in Sunshine, as we mentioned. And I know Sultry as well has this kind of choke design as well. I'm trying to think if there's other maps. I'm sure there's other maps that I'm forgetting that sort of take this design element, but something that Process pioneered. Another thing worth mentioning as well, also another choke design thing, where less about the actual choke point itself and more about that mid to second stalemate, or mid to second geometry, I suppose is the better terminology there, in the fact that the number of doors between mid and second, where, on many maps it's kind of ambiguous. or, you know, random. It's just kind of like map by map. But Process really honed in on the kind of 2.5 way of looking at the number of doors, right? And what do I mean by this? On the rollout, I'm actually going to pause here so we can get a literal example. 2.5 means there's kind of 3 doors between the 2 points, but not really, because some are, you know, attached. So we have here, let's, yeah, this is a better view. So to the left here, we have IT, that's 1 door. Right over here, we have choke, of course, is another door. And then we have sewer, which, you know, there's multiple doors in sewer, but it's still a lane, right? A place, a flank, just an area of the map. Sewer is a third, but also like kind of attached to choke, right? Where if you're trying to push into the next point, where does your flank clear if there's 3 zones? Well, your flank clears that dedicated flank that is completely detached from where the combo is going. In this case, it'd be IT. And who clears sewer? Well, it can be really anyone in the combo. Generally, it's just a pocket scout or a pocket soldier, just taking a quick peek, making sure no one's in there, right? And that's easy to do because it's in a way attached to the choke. And this is something that you see, you know, included elsewhere in other maps as well. Especially, again, Sunshine, just the quote-unquote Process clone, for good reason, because it takes this design element and improves that as well. And this sort of 2.5 route, choke point, area kind of design, whatever you want to call it, is something that you see elsewhere. And it's something that plays quite well as well, because it very much, it makes it so that there's actually like multiple interesting routes that you can go through, or at least like options for going through, compared to, for example, a gully wash where there are just 2 doors. You either go through big door or you either go through choke, and those are your only 2 options. Now those link up to other things, maybe drop down or going through baby door, but by and large it's the 2 doors, right? Which definitely simplifies things. And adding a third area, but not making it so separate that it's impossible to clear. Well, not impossible, but just a tax to clear, makes it so that you still have, you know, interesting options, but it's not too much of a burden to deal with. And that's something that you see provided elsewhere, because again, it's just a nice little design concept, right? So those are the main ways that I think Process really influenced map design. And oh, actually, one other thing that I was going to mention is just kind of the flowiness in general. A big component of this is the fact that Process has those kind of raised chokes that are very ramp-like. And just a lot of ramp surfaces throughout means that traversal on Process is very, very flowy, whether it be just rollouts or just traversal in general. It's very easy to find a ramp to slide on and chain those together, especially as a soldier. So you have a lot of the maneuverability and traversal on Process is very, very flowy. And I think that's something that people generally enjoy and something that other maps tend to include. Not always in such obvious ways as Process, but yeah. On newer maps, there's plenty of ways to kind of have that flow, and I think generally players like being able to, you know, practice jumping and be rewarded with good jumping skill by being able to traverse very easily and, let's see the word I'm looking for here. I don't know, not concisely, not fluidly. I don't know. It's it just works, right? But anyway. Yeah, so the flowiness of Process was something that stood out when the map was first conceived and played, and it's a kind of design outcome that other maps definitely try to at least capture to some extent. Maybe not to the same extent as Process, where, you know, to be fair, you see when people talk about like TF2's movement, a lot of the time it's just like Process rollouts, where it's like, you know, a roamer rollout, and then they just use another rocket to ramp slide through the other team's choke, and then you just go full map to map traversal. And it's like the same deal as that one upward rollout everyone does from like last to first. It's like, okay, you're really just chaining a bunch of ramp slides. It's not that difficult, but I guess it is flashy. And yeah, that's something that Process did. But yeah, that's kind of Process's legacy in my opinion, and where the map influenced, TF2 mapping to come, and definitely set a standard for how maps might be kind of oriented and played, and whether those conventions were stuck to or defied for specific intent is, up to the mappers of the future. But still, it was decisions made in the shadow of that kind of, processification. But anyway, with that being said, let's talk about if Process is actually good. Well, one thing I should mention as well is, does Process actually warrant being the beginner map, the map that people play on first? And my answer to that is actually yes, for a couple reasons. So one of the things is just Process being such like a standard kind of boilerplate map means that it's a lot easier to kind of focus on the fundamentals, I think, because, there's not a whole lot of map quirks. For example, if a map like Reckoner were kind of the default map, and Reckoner's a map I like, and actually a map I like more than Process, arguably. However, Reckoner is pretty brutal in the fact that it kind of defies that 2.5 design, and instead has like 3 completely separated areas between mid and second, as well as just so many doors out of last as well, which is not really unique to Reckoner. But as a result, like backcap plays are really, really powerful on that map. It's really easy to get behind. So it definitely overemphasizes spotting and clearing doors more so than most other maps. And as a result, I think that kind of skew in the balance of the map makes it not as favorable to learn on, because you just have that overemphasis. And if you're trying to teach people how to play the game, and you're trying to teach them about Uber advantages and player advantages and positioning and all the important things like that, of course spotting is a factor there. However, nonetheless, you're still, what does it matter to have Uber ad when you're, playing your first ever pug, when someone on the other team, someone on the flank of the other team can just keep going behind and backcapping. Versus Process, it's a much flatter kind of map. The strategies are much simpler and much more fundamental, and as a result, I think it is actually better suited to teaching newer players on. So yeah, I do think it kind of warrants that designation. But yeah, let's talk now about if Process is actually good or not, and talk about the positives and negatives. Because while it is in many respects kind of that basic map with just basic strategies, and on top of the fact that it's just such an old map, being so basic means that a lot of the strategies are very well traversed. So, a lot of people know how to play Process. But that doesn't mean that there aren't unique aspects to Process, and things that are uniquely good and uniquely bad about the map, which is what I'm going to talk about. So for starters, I do think that the Process mid, specifically the mid fight, is above average. There's a lot of diversity of tactics you can have on a mid fight. And actually, the strategies teams employ kind of differ at a beginner level versus a high level. Where at a beginner level, Process is played kind of rotationally, where a team picks a side and tries to push that side, sort of out-rotating and out-maneuvering the other team, such that, if someone on the other team is slow to rotate with their team, then they're out of position and an easy target to focus down and potentially kill, right? So that is, how Process generally gets played at that lower level. And then when you get to a higher level, a switch kind of flips, and people play Process much more centrally positioned and much more reactively, where if a team tries to shove aside, then that's something you can react to and either just hold your ground and try and meet them, and just kill them in whatever, corner they're rotating into. Or just rotate with them and play that rotational mid. But you're playing it much more reactively in a setting like that. And there's also a lot of interesting high ground and high ground dynamics. Obviously, as a demo, your primary job is to deny that high ground, and it can be a little difficult, honestly, depending on where you're positioned. And people like to be on the height. I mean, you kind of have to be on the height to win this mid most of the time. So, yeah, that's there's a lot of really good high ground dynamics, I think. And finally, soldiers getting behind is a big thing. I mean, obviously, like soldier high bombs are a very, achievable strategy, I suppose, because there's just plenty of things to bomb off of. So really high, like double soldier bombs are not uncommon to see. This demo is up. I think we do have another process demo we can look at here. But soldiers going behind can be a big thing because of IT largely. Oh, and another thing I should mention is because of the flowiness of the map, fast rollouts are a big thing, which again adds dynamics to the mid fight. Where as a demo you could get fast rolled out on and like kind of forced to take a 1v1, which is something to consider. So yeah, there's that. And soldiers can just fast roll out to the other team's IT and then instantly go behind. In some cases, you see soldiers fast roll out to even the other team's sewer and go behind there. But point being, getting soldiers behind is a pretty viable and honestly a pretty common strat to see in Invite. Or soldiers can just fast roll out for early high ground positioning, an early spam on the other team's demo, an early foothold into the mid fight. There's a lot of interesting dynamics like that. I do think that process mid, we actually have a mid fight here. I do think process mid plays more, yeah, see soldier kind of baiting the fast bomb there, forcing me to not get the health pack, which I would have liked to get, of course. Yeah, the mids they're interesting, and I think that process mids are above average, all things considered. Of course, that high ground, really, really important. Yeah, I like process mid. So that is one area that I think process thrives. Another area I like, and one of my favorite favorite pressures in the entire game, actually, is the process second stalemate, which we're actually about to see as well here. Pressuring into process second on even Ubers is really, really fun and really dynamic. Because as you see here, with that kind of high ground choke design, we're able to pretty easily peek this choke and possibly even take space through it. But sewer as well, which we're entering now, very, very nice for pressuring into 2, which for some reason I'm completely alone in here, and we just send the sack with no pressure. Not a big deal, we'll just play counter sack. But through sewer, it's very, very easy to, as a demo, get a lot of spam on the other team's combo and a lot of spam on players on high ground and things like that. I don't know why they're just insta-playing defensive sniper here. Kind of weird, but whatever. So there's that. And another thing to mention is that it's very easy to take space through sewer as well. And it's not rare at all for a team pressuring for their sack without even having to send their soldier yet, can get their entire combo through sewer and be fighting in yard, which is just an insane amount of space to be taking and is very strong. On top of the fact that, it's not like the defending team is just flopping around like a fish and has nothing to do. Like, obviously, you can play the spam, and if players are getting aggressive, then you can absolutely be killing them, right? So it's a very dynamic kind of setup, and in my opinion, very interesting to play. It's one of my favorite stalemates in the game because of how it just feels like you're kind of in control, and it feels like there's a lot of things you can do to make your sack as successful as possible, right? Another thing, and I wrote down my thoughts just to try and gather them a little bit here. I'm not referencing it, but just the mere process of writing something down helps you remember it. at least in the short term. But anyway, something I didn't write down, but now that I am kind of exploring the topic more, comes to me, is the fact that, like, dry push, I think Process has a really good balance of the kind of dry push to pop through / get forced dynamic, in that dry pushes on Process are pretty simple, honestly. They're not that hard to do through either choke or... Big one is sewer. Same reason that sewer is easy to take space in a stalemate, makes it easier to take space in, with add. But it's not perfect, especially like, pushing into 2, for example, if you're going through choke. You have like blind high bombs to worry about, a soldier trying to catch a timing, something like that. But it's a very straightforward push, in my opinion, and it really does kind of stress those fundamentals. But that doesn't mean that pop throughs aren't also good, because if a team is caught, and Process has really large points generally speaking, so positioning is going to matter a lot for whether you're caught or not. If a team is caught, then it's pretty common to see on Process just those nuke Ubers through a choke point where the demo lays 2 or 3 stickies and then just skyboxes and tries to catch the other team leaving a doorway, and those can be pretty decent. And I do think Process strikes a good balance between just popping through and dry pushing without trying to use your ad yet. Also, IT as an entire area is pretty good for those push throughs. Oh, looks like we're intending to take a pop through here. No, we don't have a scout with us, so we will not be doing that. Anyway, yeah, definitely some good positives there as far as Process is concerned. But now we're going to talk about the negatives. And of course, this is still going to be subjective, but Process does have quite a few negatives about it. And let me actually reference this real quick just to jog my memory. I have 2 things written. So first one, and it's actually something you're kind of seeing right now. Sniper is really, really good on Process. Process is probably Sniper's friendliest 5 CP map, with product being, the friendliest sniper map overall. And especially, I talked about the second pressure. Look at what you're about to see here, where the other team just cannot really do... Maybe it's a little bit later, but this other team can't really do much against this sniper at all. Because you can't prevent the peek through sewer. And sniper peeking sewer and even Ubers is so horrible to deal with. And it really accentuates dealing with a sniper in general, which is... just hope that your soldiers can deal with it largely, because you're going to need your soldiers really on point playing those bombs. And look at this. They just stack up in this corner, which this is real. You probably shouldn't do this because of me just raining down stickies and completely annihilating them. Their med just drops to the damage. Yeah, it's so tough to deal with. You can't stop the sniper from peeking. That's basically an impossibility. So it's all about how you deal with the fact that a sniper can be peeking that and controlling all that space. So a lot of teams will get really aggressive and maybe try and take an exchange into sewer just to force a lot of flashes. Maybe someone can't get flashed in time and they die, and then you have a pick in the post, stuff like that. Shoving flank is a big thing because you're expecting there to be one fewer person on the flank, for example, just to really hard pressure another spot of the map that the sniper isn't on, and isolate that weakness. So there's definitely counterplay, but it's just not fun, and it's not engaging to play with or against, in my opinion. Yeah, sniper on this map is generally quite strong, and it's yeah, I think a negative of Process, honestly, is the fact that sniper is so powerful. Another thing I should mention is that first of all, thankfully, this hasn't caught on yet. There was a moment like a few seasons back where it kind of seemed like it might be a thing, which is sniper to mid. Now, sniper to mid is traditionally not really good for a few reasons. One of which being sniper's just so slow. So you're basically playing down a player until your sniper shows up. And on a lot of mids, it's really not hard for soldiers to get on your sniper and just insta-kill them. So, yeah, you're just, you know, showing up to mid with a giant bomb target that shows up slow. So a lot of the time, it's not going to be a good idea. You know, think you're, I don't know, yeah, sniper to mid is just not that good. Like on Snakewater, I suppose you could roll out to like Catwalk or something, or be playing like Upper Saw, stuff like that. Generally speaking, though, it's not very strong. But on Process, it's really not that bad because, again, Process mid is such a huge point that your sniper is really, really far away from the other team, meaning that it's very easy for that sniper to just control a lot of space, and can be kind of difficult for the other team soldiers to get on them, especially like if, you know, again, the sniper showing up late. If your soldiers like lose health early and then the sniper just shows up and gets to scope up, your soldiers might not be healthy enough to get on them, especially not through like scouts, which Process is a notoriously scout favored map because of how open it is, which I don't really include as necessarily a positive or a negative, to be honest. But yeah, sniper to mid can be quite difficult to deal with. And the main idea behind it is not just to win the mid, but it's to win the mid. You're not trying to wipe the other team when you show up sniper to mid. You're not really trying or expecting to be able to just headshot the medic and kill them. You're much more expecting the other team to kind of concede mid based off the fact that you have a sniper in position, and you just can't really take space against it. Which introduces a stalemate on second, which, remember what I mentioned earlier, the sniper stalemate on second is really strong for the attackers. And you're already set up. You already have that sniper ready to peek second, right? So I think sniper to mid on Process is it viable? I don't know. It seems somewhat easy to deal with or simple to deal with if a team is doing it consistently, but I think it's really awful, like to play against and also play with. It's just boring. Yeah. So I'm happy that it's not a staple strategy, but definitely a negative of Process is the fact that it is just such a sniper friendly map. As well, I should mention, as far as Disad is concerned, Disad sniper is so strong where, you know, it's very, very easy to get a sniper posted up, just peeking through choke on mid, for example, if it's a Disad on mid, and the other team will never be able to dry push through choke. Their only option is to pop through. Likewise, a sniper on bats on second or lower lobby on second, exact same situation. So difficult to get on that guy. A lot of the time you're just going to have to pop through. Sniper's really powerful in the forward spawns on mid, preventing a dry push through choke or trying to get a sneaky pick there. Needs to be dealt with. Sniper is really good on Disad on the other team second because you can just sit them in sewer and they're pretty safe. And again, they watch everything, so you're just forcing the other team to pop through. So a lot of the time, Sniper just has so many good sight lines on Process, and it makes it quite difficult because you are in the situation where you're just kind of forced to pop through. Now, a lot of the time, Sniper does force a team to pop through, or at least encourages them to, rather than take the time to deal with the sniper, with a soldier and whatnot, but it's especially bad on Process. And I think the fact that Sniper is such a powerful class on this map is absolutely a downside. Now, the other downside is Process is just kind of bland. It's very inoffensive in many respects. Now, of course, you know, there are uniquely bad things about it, like I talked about with the sniper issue. But, you know, there's just not a whole lot to bite into. Overall, the flanks are pretty one-dimensional. While there is a lot of interesting dynamic things you can do on the map as far as like mid-fights are concerned, or as far as, you know, that mid to second stalemate, as I mentioned. In many ways, it's a kind of flowcharty map. It can be kind of formulaic. There aren't, like, the edges have been sanded off, right? Which, you know, still helps it be kind of a beginner-friendly map, in my opinion, but also makes it so that, you know, it's not going to be that interesting at the end of the day. I do think that, you know, this is a very subjective criticism to be making, but yeah, I don't know. If you're playing like Roamer, for example, and I'm sure there's some Roamer players who love process. Actually, I don't even know if there are that many. Because if you're playing Roamer, the flank is just not really that interesting. You're just going to be playing through IT, and that's it. And also, you know, you're just kind of going to be getting chewed up by scouts the entire game. When it's time to bomb, you just bomb in and get chewed up by scouts, and then you... you know, have the one really, really simple flank to play that is really easy to deep spot, and yeah, it's kind of one-dimensional in that respect. So, as a result, yeah, process can just be pretty bland and pretty boring. And that's honestly one of the primary reasons that I am not super keen on the map, is just the fact that, you know, it is very inoffensive, and while, you know, that could be a positive for some people, is the fact that, you know, you don't have, you know, for example, Snakewater has a lot going for it, and then it just has, you know, one of the worst lasts in the game. Process doesn't have as much going for it, in my opinion, but, well, maybe it does. Whatever. Point being that, you know, it's not as... What's the word I'm looking for? By being inoffensive, it doesn't really have much interest that like really engages you necessarily. So I do think that it can end up being a bit of a bland map as a result. Is there any other... Was there another criticism? I like thought I had something, but maybe I lost it. Yeah, in any case, process, definitely the most classic 5CP map, but I wouldn't even... I don't know if I'd put it in even like my upper half of preferred maps, because it can just be a little bland at times. But that being said, I do still think it does warrant its place as, you know, this very... it has a very strong legacy, is what I'm trying to say. And I do think that's warranted. And I do think it's warranted that it's kind of the beginner's map, and the map that most people learn to play sixes on, because, again, it's kind of bland and inoffensive, meaning it's very easy to focus more on the format than focus on the quirks of the map, right? Which is going to be more so the case with some other more unique playing maps that, you know, experienced players are generally going to prefer, because they are more unique in that respect. But nonetheless, yeah, might be harder for beginners. So anyway, I think that's all I have to talk about. Yeah, let me know what you guys think of process, whether you like it, whether you hate it. But I will probably call things here. Hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time.